Hello and welcome to Micro Live. Later in the program, I'll be looking at the winner of last night's Interactive Video Disc Awards.
And I've spent this week wrestling with a modem, a computer and an RS-232 interface lead. I'll be joined and talking to John Cole about some of the problems of computer communication.
And our American reporter Fref visits the world's first ever Museum of Computing.
Before all that, though, later this month, a computer adventure game called Spellbreaker will be released in the UK. Here's the pack. It's available for a range of micros, including the Apple Macintosh and the Commodore 64, and it's the latest release from the American games company INFOCOM. Well, earlier this year, INFOCOM invited MicroLive to film behind the scenes during the writing of the game.
The headquarters of Boston software company INFOCOM. The software writers are holding their regular technical meeting.
I've got this spell in Spellbreaker that's turning out to be a serious source of bugs. It's called Gurgle, and what it does is stop time.
So what's going on internally when you cast a spell? I mean, the status line updates, the interrupts run?
Yeah, everything still happens to you because time is subjective. At least, well, in this game, time is subjective. The status line records your own subjective time, and it keeps advancing. So that's okay. The problem is just that all the interrupt routines, the things that would run periodically, like, you know, a million tons of rock falling on your head, have to stop.
INFOCOM have won many awards for what they claim is a new art form known as interactive fiction. Their products differ from ordinary computer adventure games. The parsers are more sophisticated. That's the bit of the program that understands what you type in, so your instructions can almost be in ordinary English. And they're written to be read like novels. The company was started in 1979 by 10 adventure game addicts, who also happen to be researchers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
We tried to find something small, something very manageable that we could start with. It wouldn't take a lot of work and would bring in some money and get us going. It turned out that the subject we chose, interactive fiction, did more than just bring in a little bit of money. It formed the basis of a major ongoing business.
Dave Lebling was another of the original 10. He wrote the latest game, Spellbreaker.
Spellbreaker is the third game in a trilogy in which, instead of playing an adventurer, you play a magician, and you advance from being an apprentice to being one of the most powerful magicians in the land.
A game like Spellbreaker is not written directly onto a computer. It starts life as a few ideas jotted on paper.
Initially, it's almost like writing a book. You come up with a plot. This is a civilization founded on magic, and magic has stopped working. And then you start thinking of logic puzzles and things which will advance the plot and at the same time provide intellectual stimulation for the people who are playing it.
The games are coded in a language called ZIL on a mainframe development system. ZIL stands for Zork Implementation Language, Zork being the name of INFOCOM's first product. And it's a descendant of the artificial intelligence language Lisp.
What makes ZIL special for that is that the language itself knows a lot about interactive fiction. And when I say knows, I mean built into the language are a lot of tools for manipulating objects and characters so that each writer doesn't have to start from scratch. Writers and programmers aren't necessarily the same sort of creatures. And you really want to give people who are writers the best tools you can to help them write interactive fiction because, as you say, it isn't like just writing with a pencil on a piece of paper.
But not everyone at INFOCOM gives the writers an easy time.
Debuggers, testers, their job is to make my life miserable. And in fact, they've done such a wonderful job of it that they have filled up an entire book with bugs from my game. And so far, they have contributed over 250 pages of bugs of my game. Just 5 bugs per page, pages and pages and pages.
Dave, I've got this great bug.
I wouldn't doubt it.
You walk into the octagonal room, and they're describing the 8 sides of the walls and the runes, and it gets to the south wall, and it just goes crazy. It says south, 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 and it just goes on for pages, and it doesn't stop.
What happened is I rewrote the thing that prints which walls have runes on them and tells the directions, and I bet I forgot to make it terminate. So, let me take a look. It's probably something very simple. So why is it not terminating? It really ought to work. Oh well.
While Lebling wrestles with the bugs, the designers are putting the finishing touches to the Spellbreaker box. INFOCOM are renowned for their clever packaging, which often contains clues to help solve the puzzles. But strangely, the visuals don't extend to the screen. INFOCOM games are purely text.
I think there are no graphics in our interactive fiction for the same reason that most novels that you pick up in a store don't have graphics either, which is that the goal is basically for you to use your imagination to picture the scenes rather than trying to depict everything for you. And I think especially since most of the stories are sort of imaginative fiction anyway, I think to some extent if you look at the quality of graphics that you can get on your Apple or your IBM, what you mostly get are cartoon-type graphics.
And a more commercial reason may be that without graphics, a condensed version of the compiled ZIL code can be tailored to run on virtually any micro, just by adding a short interpreter program.
When a new machine comes out, we get a different bunch of people, which are in our microcomputer support group, to write this relatively small program, this interpreter program for that new machine. And in fact, that's what we're doing now for the new Atari machine and the Amiga machine, which Commodore just announced. And in fact, it's a very small process. It's just a couple of months. And once that little interpreter program is written, our whole product line will then run on that machine without modification.
And finally, a sneak preview of one of the problems from Spellbreaker.
In one point in the game, there is an idol, a temple containing a basalt idol of great size and ferocious aspect. And you climb up the idol and look in its mouth. And when you look in its mouth, you find that indeed in the idol is a cube, except when you try to reach it, you find that there's not enough room for your arm to fit between its razor-sharp teeth. So the problem is, how do you get this silly cube out of the idol's mouth? For example, I tried taking it and you couldn't, so I can try opening the mouth, and it says, not a chance. I can try hit the mouth with the knife. Now I have a knife. It says, I've known strange people, but fighting a mouth, that's silly. You could try magic. There's a magic spell which opens things. It says there's no hinge there. You can't open something without a hinge. It's not a door. So the problem was how to do it. And in fact, I was stumped myself. I came up with this idea. I invented the idol. I invented its mouth. So I thought about it for a while. I couldn't come up with an answer, so I talked to the other writers and got, as it turned out, some very good suggestions. For example, Steve Moretsky, who wrote some of our other games, said, well, you know, if you yawn, you're going to open your mouth. So that brought up the question of, well, how do you make a stone idol yawn? Which led to yet another possible additional complication, which is that you had to make the idol come to life, to animate, and then make the silly thing yawn. So in fact, that's what we implemented. So I would say Malion the idol. Malion animates an inanimate object. And it doesn't work. A bug immediately. Oh, of course, yes, I know exactly what I did wrong. Stupidly, I'm sitting on the idol, and I brought it to life. Now, if you had a flea on you, you would find it and eradicate it pretty quickly. Well, the idol did exactly the same thing to me. Just goes to show that the writers of the games can't play them any better than anyone else.
Well, I'm glad to see that even software writers do have their problems, though I notice they can sort their own out. I have had a few problems of my own this week with baud rates, stop and start bits, parity settings. I've been trying to communicate with my home micro. I did have a margin of success. I managed to send and receive messages in a mailbox on Telecom Gold. That was actually thanks to a simple piece of software written by John Cole. Oh. But I still haven't managed to get into our own bulletin board, John. More of that later.
Yes.
You seem to be having a simple time of it with this setup.
Right,
what is
this
it?
is a nice piece of software. It's really great. The great advantage is that when you buy the software, it comes with all the information in that you need. For example, you can select the service you want, EasyLink, One-to-One, Prestel, Telecom Gold, whatever, and all you do is select that and then dial. And the system knows automatically, well, it would do if it was working properly, the system knows automatically that, we'll go over to the other port, come on machine, that way, and
try and tell me what it should
dial
be
on that
doing
one.
anyway.
Right.
Oh, it's done it.
It's going to dial, I hope.
So you don't have to pick up the phone and actually dial
That's
for yourself?
right. It's got the numbers in it. It's also got the baud rates, the start and stop bits, and everything else. So it's just ready to go. theoretically.
No setting up at all.
That's the idea.
Theoretically, as you say.
Yes,
and
work
the
beautifully in
services,
rehearsals.
all the commercial services and bulletin boards and everything
That's right.
as well.
You can do all those different things. Bulletin boards, electronic mail, Prestel, conferencing systems.
Yeah. What's conferencing, by the way?
Oh, that's something quite exciting. It's a way of bringing together a whole group of people who've got a common interest and sharing messages between them.
Via a computer.
Via a computer. But what's so interesting is that the people who are using it have ceased to be dominated by the technicalities of the computer, and they're starting to use the system for real as a communications medium. In fact, I know one very large company who are finding it so effective and such a commercial advantage that they actually want to keep it a secret that they're using conferencing systems so the competition don't find out. I mean, that's quite an indicator that it's powerful.
Yeah, it's refreshing to hear people praising what the system does rather than how it does it. I must admit, I want one.
Yes.
What is it, by the way?
So do I.
Vicom.
It's called Vicom.
Yeah.
First-rate software. £172 for the software, £300 for the modem. So the whole setup at the moment is quite expensive.
Yeah.
And in fact, you're far more likely to have something like this at home at the moment.
Now that modem, let me have a look.
Do you recognise that? Is that the one at home?
Vaguely. No, mine was a single rate, 1275 baud rate. Smaller than that.
Close. This is a more flexible thing.
Right.
The purpose of the modem is to take the signals from the computer and convert them in a form that can travel down the phone lines. For example, if you want to get anything down the phone line, you have to convert it to an audio tone like
something you can
those
hear.
two tones for 0 and 1. We've got a graphic. If we show you that, you'll see what I mean. Every character is built up of a set of tones in a certain order. And a different character, we put B up next, we see a different set of orders for the two tones going down the line. So the modem just takes the computer signals, push them down the line's audio tones.
So it just translates?
That's right.
One form of signal into another?
One of the interesting things is that you may have noticed that when data goes down, it takes a little while to come back up on the screen. And that's because, if we look at the next graphic, you'll see the computer, when you push a key, the data goes all the way down to the distant computer and then comes back and appears on the screen. So it's actually got to traverse quite a long route before it makes it to the screen.
But when it does appear on the screen, that verifies that it's got all the way to its destination and come back again.
Right.
That explains that. In fact, that explains the basics of a modem, I suppose.
Yes, the modem's quite straightforward in a way.
Reasonably simple. But when it comes to the software, communication software can be very tricky indeed.
Yes.
What have we got up here? Communicator. Now, this is fine if you want to communicate to through Telecom Gold, because that's what it's set up for.
Right, it's set up for that.
But if you want to change the parameters, I think you call it, look what you're faced with. I mean, a checklist as long as 3 arms.
It really is a bit intimidating, isn't it?
And is all that necessary?
No, it isn't.
I mean, what do you need to know out of that?
OK, well, one of the most important things you need to change is the baud rate if you're going to talk to another system.
What is the baud rate exactly?
Ah, right. You ask the awkward questions. Right, that's set for 1200 baud. That means 1200 bits per second that's going down the line. Each character requires 10 bits. So you can send 120 characters per second down the line.
Yeah.
Now, the computer at the other end has to be set up at the same baud rate so that it can receive 120 characters per second.
So you mean you have to set your computer up to match the computer at the other end?
Exactly so.
Right.
Now, if, for example, you want to talk to a bulletin board, it's pretty likely that the bulletin board is going to be working on 300 baud. So we can just change that down to 300, go down to the transmit baud rate and change that up to 300.
That now explains why I couldn't get through to the bulletin board last night with my single rate modem.
Oh, I see.
1275.
Right, yes.
Thank you very much for explaining that to me.
Okay.
Right. How many baud rates are there?
Oh, there are lots and lots, but there are two main ones. 300 baud for the bulletin boards, and as far as commercial services are concerned, there's a whole range, but pretty common is 1200 baud receive and 75 baud transmit. You can get into most systems with that. So those are the two that it would be sensible to go for. You'll cover yourself both ways.
And in fact, that's what you should go for if you haven't bought any equipment and you want to communicate.
Yes.
If you think there's any likelihood of going for a bulletin board, make sure you've got a dual...
Buy a dual standard modem so you can cope with both. The software will always cope with both anyway.
What else have we got on this list?
Well,
what's parity and parity checking and all that?
We could pick almost any of these parameters and talk about them, but let me just talk about parity. This is a beautiful hangover from the days of paper tape, punch paper tape. 7 bits are needed for the character. Now, if the paper tape got a tear in it, you might get an extra hole. So they added an extra row of holes called parity. Let's have a look at another graphic and I can explain that better with that. Right, there are 7 bits marked under the character and the parity bit. At the moment, for the character A, they're just 2 bits at a 1. If we look at the character B, different combination, just 2 bits. And character C, OK, now this time you'll see there are 3 ones within the character and the parity bit is on.
Yes.
A total of 4 bits, again an even number. and that's called even parity. You set the parity bit to make up an even number of ones in the 8 bits that you're going to send.
You say you set, but in fact you don't really have to set it, do you?
Well,
if it's
no.
now accepted that everyone sets it even.
Well, everybody uses even parity apart from the bulletin boards, and since anyway, if you get an error, there's not much you can do about it. Most systems, like this one, for example, say parity checking off.
Yeah.
In other words, well, forget it. And that covers every possibility.
So
Let's just ignore
I think
the
the
problem.
message I'm getting from you is that the software writers have actually given us too many options, and all we really need to think about is the baud rate at this stage.
Yes, luckily things are shaking down and we've got so few options. We can simplify things a lot and just turn up some really simple software, which is very easy to use.
If the day ever comes we end up with something as simple as Vicom and cheap enough for everyone to afford, then communications, I think, will really take off.
That's the way.
Thanks very much, John. Thanks very much indeed. Well, I must say, I've got even more admiration for those of you now who are in touch with our bulletin board, having seen what it takes. And thanks as well, a big thanks to all of those who dialed in last week to the MicroLive bulletin board and pledged money to the Children in Need appeal. To all of those who managed to get through during the programme, we will be sending you a MicroLive T-shirt.
Apricot are to stop production of their F1 machine following the announcement this week of a £4.6 million loss over the last 6 months. The F1 was introduced in June 1984 as the cheapest machine in the Apricot range, priced at £895. The company is now to concentrate on selling more expensive machines like the Zen. Users have complained that the F1 was sold with defective software and have formed a society to combat what they see as Apricot's cavalier treatment of their complaints. On hearing that the F1 was to be discontinued, a spokesman for the user group said, "I'm not at all surprised." High street store Dixon's is taking a massive gamble this Christmas by trying to sell off most of the unsold stocks of home computers left after last year's slump. They've bought all 75,000 of the remaining Atari 800 XLs, which are no longer in production, all of the remaining Commodore C16s, which will only continue in production if Dixon's can sell them, and all stocks of Acorn's Electron, over which Acorn say there is a question of how long we will continue manufacture. They also bought up £10 million worth of Sinclair stock in the summer when Sinclair got into financial difficulties. Lucasfilms, makers of the film Star Wars, have lost their fight to stop supporters of President Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative using the term Star Wars to describe the policy. Star Wars has been used by journalists as a convenient bit of shorthand to indicate the president's research program into space weapons. Lucasfilms say they don't mind newspapers using it, but they do object when it's used to solicit money. They claim the words Star Wars are theirs. The company say, after all, you can't find Star Wars in the Oxford English Dictionary.
Thank you, Fred. Now, it's easy to forget that the entire history of electronic computing only dates back 40 years or so. The changes in that time have been astonishing, as Fred found out when he took a trip to Museum Wharf in downtown Boston.
Boston has long been a center for research and development in computing and is the East Coast's answer to California's Silicon Valley. But it's also a city with a sense of history, so it's perhaps appropriate to find, next to the famous Boston Tea Party Harbor, in a converted warehouse, the world's first computer museum. The museum opened here in November 1984. Its collection features such highlights as the first object ever designed on a computer, this rather dull ashtray, a somewhat premature tombstone for the computer language COBOL, and even a display of animals built from leftover components and used in America in an advertising campaign. The oldest computer on display in the museum is Whirlwind, developed in 1945 at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. It cost $5 million to build and filled 2 very large rooms. This is one of the original modules. The U.S. Navy used it as a primitive flight simulator, and later it served as a prototype for the next computer on display, the Q7. The Q7 was the largest computer ever built, weighing nearly 175 tons. It used over 55,000 vacuum tubes ranged in 7-foot-high racks. Each of these tiny cores stored a single bit of data, giving the Q7 a total working memory of just 64K, the same as a small home micro today. There was also backup storage on huge magnetic drums that rotated at over 90 miles per hour and had to be constantly monitored against overheating. Each held about the same amount of data as a modern floppy disk. The Q7 was all a real computer should be, lots of switches and flashing lights. And it can also claim to be the longest-lived computer ever. It was built in 1958 as part of the American Air Defense System and, amazingly, was still in operational use in 1983, 25 years later. The control room, where the technicians tracked aircraft and missiles on bulky cathode ray tubes, was bathed in a vivid blue light, and there was even an early attempt at user-friendliness. Each console had its own light pen.
The fighters lock on target, and rockets are fired.
This was a breakthrough. Not this, this. It's Digital's PDP-8. The first ever computer you could plug directly into the mains, it ushered in a whole new era of powerful mini-computers. Much more powerful and much larger was ILIAC-4, an early supercomputer. Its 64 processing elements, this is one, were the first to use solid-state memory chips. It cost over $100 million and consumed a greedy 500 kilowatts of power. The museum has devoted one of its galleries to computer graphics. This is perhaps the earliest example. It's a cloth portrait woven on a jacquard loom, a device that was programmed with punched cards. The first visual display units, huge cathode ray tubes, nestle up to the very latest plasma screen technology. Plasma screens work by using a grid of wires to energize tiny pockets of fluorescent gas. Ever wonder why so many computer graphic images have teapots in them? In 1974, a computer scientist named Martin Newell needed a simple curved shape for some imaging tests, and he happened to have this teapot on his desk. So he laboriously photographed and measured it, then entered all the coordinates into his computer. Other researchers, rather than repeat that effort, simply borrowed Newell's data, and a flood of simulated teapots was unleashed upon the world. Behind this glass is Martin Newell's original teapot. And in the computer alongside, Newell's data is processed to produce a matching picture. This section of the museum is dedicated to the evolution of the personal computer. Set your time machines for a long while ago, 1975. That's when this came out, the Altair 8800 microcomputer kit with a mind-boggling quarter K of memory. 2 years later, you could buy this Commodore PET 2001. Although a look at its keyboard shows it's still more for techies than typists, it did have an onboard cassette recorder. Here we have the Radio Shack TRS-80. We call them Trash 80s here. The Honeywell kitchen computer, a failed consumer product. Very few housewives wanted to spend $10,000 to catalog their menus, but here was a winner. This board had two major innovations. First, its processor and its memory were together on the same board. That had never been done before. And secondly, it had BASIC built-in on a ROM chip. It's the Apple I. And when hobbyist Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak built this, they had no idea they were about to spawn a multinational corporation. Over here, we've got the Osborne I, first portable microcomputer, and two British machines, the Sinclair ZX80 and ZX81, which broke price barriers and introduced thousands to computing who would never have otherwise discovered it.
Yes, including me. Fref reporting there on the short history of computing. And it's interesting to think that if the ZX80 had been launched just 30 years earlier, they'd have had to find room inside for this. It's 1 kilobyte and several kilograms of memory, circa about 1950. More about the history and development of computer memory next week. I, for one, am glad they didn't have those inside. Well, last night saw the second annual Interactive Video Disc Awards. One of the winners was Jim Braithwaite. Jim, we're familiar with interactive computer games, but how is this different?
Well, the main difference between the games that we've been talking about earlier in the programme is that we now have access to video data, which is held on the video disc. And
we've got a video disc here, yes?
Yes.
What is actually stored on there?
Well, we can store anything from 55,000 still frames, video pictures, films, computer information and soundtracks.
The whole lot? It's a vast storage medium then?
A vast storage medium.
Where does the computer come into all this?
Well, as you can see here, if we look at the game, we can move from the first floor to the second floor. The computer is now controlling the video disc. It's going to find the appropriate frame and start us off on the game.
Now this is that's a more computer animation here. Now this doesn't look like BBC computer animation.
No, it's not. It's produced by another micro and then laid off onto videotape and put onto the video disc.
So what are we required to do? We press the space bar to get into the room.
We press the space bar and we're into the game.
Right, ladies and gentlemen!
What's happening is the doctors who play this game, it's a game for doctors, are trying to find objects which are hidden behind the various rooms. And they're given some light-hearted entertainment as they're going through. But there are some serious questions also on the disc.
So this is a question coming here, is it?
Yes.
The humble yen. The second item, a bowl.
The idea is it's a race against time, or you're supposed to collect things or score points? What?
It's both. It's a race against time, and you can score points by answering the questions correctly. At the end of this sequence, the question will come up. The computer will put the question over the top of the video, and we'll be able to make a choice.
Now, this is a very long-winded one. I noticed we've had some much shorter ones today.
Yes.
We haven't been able to control what's come up. This is totally random, I take it.
Well, it's based on the program. The program is a very simple one as far as the computer is concerned. It's a basic program, but what it's able to do is to access the video pictures, and then when it runs up to the particular frame that it's looking for, it will switch back to the as it's done now.
Right, so we've got a
Have a go
question
at that
here.
one.
All these, or extracts from them, have been used for contraception, to promote wound healing in cancer therapy, or repeat the question. Oh, I don't know, number 2.
Okay, there we go.
Wrong, I'm afraid.
What's the purpose of it?
Well, the purpose of it is to, it's a promotional item which the drug company who commissioned it, they use it for entertaining their doctors and to helping with the education.
Now, so far, most of the images we've seen have come off the video disc. What does the computer do apart from take the input?
Well, it controls the program. It randomizes, because we didn't know what particular pictures were going to come up behind each of the doors. It takes care of that, and it also keeps our score.
Thank you. Well, I do know that video, interactive video, isn't just games like this, and all kinds of other things, but where can we see it in action?
Well, the best place to see it is, and the other prize winners from the game, is at the National Interactive Video Centre in Marylebone Road, London.
Right, thanks, Jim, and congratulations on winning.
Thank you very much.
Leslie?
I don't know, doctors are supposed to be a sales-resistant group. They'll never be able to resist that. We'll be back at the usual time next Friday with, among other things, a good look at the machine everybody's talking about. Here it is, Commodore's new micro, the Amiga. But that's enough for now. Until then, bye-bye.